and Zoobie show on the world famous LIR.com and 92.7 LIR.com. And now on YouTube, I am John Kalaboukas, the Bouk, with my friend Paul Zubulake, Zoobie, and our special guest, Alexander Stam, originally from Wanto High School, but now at Fairfield University. Welcome back. And we used to call you the boy wonder, but we're going to call you the man wonder just because of your NFL draft picks.
Oh, I thought you were going to say because he was in college.
1 year difference.
Welcome to the show, Alex.
He's
Thank
18
you.
years
Thank
old
you for
now,
having
so
me.
we're calling him man. We're calling him the man wonder now. No more boy wonder.
Yeah, no. So for those who don't know, Alex was on our draft preview last year, right, Alex? And he actually made a name for himself on the Bouk and Zoobie show because we asked Alex for a couple of players and that were off, not like sleepers, but more like who did he like who may not go in the first round. And Alex, do you remember? I know two of the guys, but how many guys do you remember that whole situation and how many you gave us?
I think I gave you the Michigan State receiver, Jaden Reed, who I always really liked. I know he's with the Packers. I think he scored like the first touchdown in like 3 of their games towards the end of the season, which was pretty good. And I think I gave you a player from USC. Um,
Sure did.
and then I feel like I said something about Rodgers also. And I said like he would get traded before the draft and that everyone was overreacting it. And I could just see that they were just waiting till like last second to see if the Packers would drop their price, but they didn't, which obviously sucked. But no.
Yeah, so I don't know if you ever got to listen to our content after that, Alex, about how, we actually had a special pod about the Aaron Rodgers trade. So you were correct on that. You said
Uh-huh.
that he would get traded before the draft. We disagreed. You actually mentioned you weren't that high on Joe Douglas, and I defended
Oh
Joe
yes,
Douglas.
yes,
Fair. You gave us Jaden Reed, and you gave us Tooley, which I will never get his last name, from the Rams.
oh that's it. Yeah,
So you gave us, because I thought it was just those two, but you nailed them both. So I think Tooley actually has a
yeah.
chance for rookie of the. I don't know if they gave out the rookie awards,
No,
defensive
they
rookie of
didn't.
the
They
year.
didn't call it yet, but I think he's leading the rookies in sacks though, which is pretty good. But I don't know if he's gonna win it.
So for our fans out there, they're like they're bringing in this kid from Fairfield University. Well, there's a reason. He had a great show. So now the pressure's on, right, John? The
Yeah, I
expectations
know.
for Alex are significantly higher going into the Super Bowl preview. You went from the draft preview, Alex, to the Super Bowl preview. So from a Bouk and
Yeah,
Zoobie perspective, you are now in the big time. So the heat is on, my friend. So all jokes
yeah.
aside, we're happy to have you and very happy everybody's going to tune in. John, I thought our first show on YouTube went pretty well. I will try this week to not have any dumb looking faces throughout the show. We've got John out of the, we'll call it the clouds or the ghost. So we got rid of that. So we're hoping that each week we progressively get a little better on how to be on video as opposed to just audio.
Yep, yep. So we are going to speak about the NFL, of course, since it's a Super Bowl preview show. But since this is more metropolitan based, we may as well speak about the drama-based New York Jets again. I mean, can we ever avoid this team making news in 1 week? It's just crazy. So there, just to give everyone an idea, there was an article that was printed in the Atlantic, and it was pretty controversial as far as I'm concerned because uh, they had coaches that were quoted but anonymously, and
Anonymous, yes.
anonymous, some anonymous, but they were making comments that we've been making all year. But frankly, I mean, as fans observing what was going on with this team, And this all made sense to me. I don't know about you, Paul. I know you read this article. It made perfect sense, everything that was said. There was no surprises in that article.
Well, I'll give you my overall view of the article, and then we'll let Alex take a shot on it. So when it came out, and it was unfortunately the day after we spoke, so we weren't able to speak about on last week's show. So we are actually now on video on Monday the 5th, as opposed to last week where we were on Tuesday dropping Wednesday. Now we're Monday dropping tomorrow. So we unfortunately didn't get to talk about this because it was definitely the #1 story for a day, and that's all it deserved. Because when I first heard, it was the Atlantic one, and then it was Diana Rossini and Zach Rosenblatt who were the investigative reporters on this deal. I knew right away that Diana Rossini especially still is kind of upset with Rodgers from when the trade talk was happening, and Rodgers told Adam Schefter to lose his number, and then he basically said, Diana Rossini, who is she? And she was at ESPN at that time and has since gone to the Atlantic. So I knew immediately, like, okay, this is going to be a hatchet job. And they deserve to be the hatchet deserved to go to the Jets, let's face it, because it was a disaster, and we all know that. But the one thing that I took from it, John, was that her primary source, or their primary source, was Zach Wilson, and somebody in the front office who we'll get to in a second. But to me, that's what it felt like. Zach Wilson, and maybe Zach Wilson's mother, because Zach Wilson's mother, believe it or not, does have a profile in the social media world, whatever that is.
Mm-hmm.
And I wouldn't be even remotely shocked that the reporter befriended her at the beginning of the year, knowing that she would just be a fantastic source to get some inside information. So that was like my initial thought on it. And if you, like you said, if you went through it, what was so shocking? That Nathaniel Hackett didn't know how to prepare for a game. I mean, remember the Dallas game? It was the second game of the year. And we were like, what is this guy doing all week? So there wasn't that much. And Zach found that Aaron Rodgers wasn't exactly as buddy as he seemed. I mean, what did Zach expect him to do? He was out the whole season rehabbing in California. What is Rodgers going to like? He's going to text Zach on a daily basis and see how he's doing. So I really felt that Zach was the primary source, despite the fact that they had 30 sources.
That's right.
And then I'll get to Rex Hogan in a second. But what do you think, Alex? What do you think about? I don't know if you read the article or you've definitely heard something about it. So what's your thought on that report? Did you think it was a hatchet job, or did you think it was kind of, it was needed to be said?
I mean, I feel like this is just something that was going to come out all year. It's just there's too much like drama within the Jets organization. You knew that bringing in Rodgers, the stories like this are just going to happen. This is just another one of the stories they make throughout the year, and they try to put a bad rep on the Jets, which they're always going to have a bad rep to them. That's just how they are as a franchise. So it's just another BS story that comes out, and people look at it and they just try to point fingers at guys like Rodgers and the Jets coaching staff, which obviously they're all right at best. I mean, you would think that they would have a top defense in the league for how much talent they have, but offensively, you rank 32nd. Obviously the offensive coordinator stinks. You rank 32nd in the league. I mean, you don't need the quarterback to go behind your back and tell you that the offensive coordinator sucks. You don't rank 32nd in the league in offense if you have a good offensive coordinator. I mean, at least don't be dead last if you have a good offensive coordinator. It doesn't matter who you have playing quarterback. At a certain point, if you're last in the league, it reflects coaching.
Oh, and I'm going to read a couple of snippets from this article, and this I think it goes to your point, Paul, that maybe one of the authors has an axe to grind with Rodgers. So you're right. It was 30 sources. Those sources described a team riddled with excuse making, which we knew, a paranoid head coach, an ill-equipped offensive coordinator, and an organizational tunnel vision on the quarterback that rubbed some teammates wrong. The other thing is they were talking about how Johnson, as we call him, Captain Chaos, or Paul loves to call him Captain Chaos,
Hey,
as
John,
being the
is that the perfect nickname? I mean, let's face it. I
Captain
called him that
Chaos.
a couple months ago, and my God, that's pretty accurate.
And the funny thing is in the article they refer to Johnson as the GM and Joe Douglas as the assistant GM. If you pretty interesting. Um, and then they referred about the offense, which I found, I don't know if this is true or not, but they said over the summer, Rodgers collaborated with Hackett to construct the offense. Saleh, as usual, was hands off on that side of the ball. Rodgers and Hackett's relationship dynamic is more frat brothers than player coach. And Rodgers appreciates having the free will to operate the system as he sees fit. That's what Aaron wants, was the common refrain from Hackett as he told coaches what plays he wanted to run during camp. Often Rodgers would hear Hackett's play call and want something else and reset the entire offense. Again, I think there's a lot of truth to that as far as I'm
Sure.
concerned. I mean, he was deferring almost every single time to Rodgers. And then one other thing that really bugged me, and we spoke about it on the podcast many times, they referred to when Rodgers went down, the Jets supposedly, but it says in the article, the Jets reached out to some veteran quarterbacks, Chad Henne, Carson Wentz, and Colt McCoy, but instead decided to roll with Wilson until Rodgers returned. Man, what a mistake that was. I mean, we just think about that.
Well,
That was
that
the end of the season right then and there.
right, we know that, but we also knew that they reached out to some players. There's no doubt that they reached out. The Wentz piece, Wentz is on the record saying that he reached out. So is there anything in the article that you saw that you considered something that was really I didn't know already? I mean, maybe Salah being paranoid. Is that maybe the biggest part of it? I mean, we joked
Maybe.
about his relationship with Joe Benigno and Alex. I don't know up in Fairfield if you were aware of this, but Joe Benigno, who was from the WFAN, had a relationship with the coach, and we were kind of talking about this, right, John? Weeks before anybody even mentioned it.
Yeah.
Like, why in the world is Robert Saleh spending any time with Joe? Nothing against Joe, but it's like a lack of focus. So those type of things, John, right? When you read it again, you're like, okay, so he's paranoid about the coverage and how the Jets get ripped in the media. I don't know how any coach comes in here. That's not the first discussion they have, and the
Right.
history about how the media is going to treat the Jets. Even the guys who cover the Jets, honestly, they get joy out of the Jets losing. I hate to say it. They'll never admit it. Oh, I don't want to cover a team that's good because I want to cover a team that's good. I don't want to cover the team that's bad. I don't know. Some of those beat guys kind of revel in them suffering. I really believe that.
Well, and the one thing in the article which I think we both felt is that he was afraid of losing his job, meaning Saleh. And I think the one thing that they referred to is when Rodgers endorsed Saleh and Douglas, and then the next day Johnson decided to say, okay, yeah, they're going to stay with us next year. Very interesting. I forgot about that Rodgers actually gave a vote of confidence to those two guys, and then Johnson did it the next day. The next day.
Nope, that's how it played out. So, is there any other tidbits in there that you think that are anything interesting, or is it just
No, no,
a really just an off-season? It's all about getting clicks for the Atlantic and getting people to subscribe. Let's face
yeah.
it. So they make it sound like they have this in-depth sources in the room, and so let's shift to this guy Rex Hogan.
Well,
So
I wanted to ask
yeah, sure.
Alexander a question. So, Alexander, the fact that all these great coaches are available, Paul and I spoke about this on the podcast last week. With all these coaches available, how do you feel about Saleh remaining while You have Belichick out there. You have Vrabel out there. You have just so many good coaches. And we are unfortunately stuck with Salah. I mean, what do you think about him as a coach?
Like obviously, like I would never with Belichick. I can't do that. That's never happening. But Rabel is a guy I really like. I think Harbaugh also was a guy that I would have liked to interview. I look. I think Salah's a good coach, but ultimately, I think he's just not the type of coach that will ultimately win a Super Bowl. And honestly, I feel like we're just wasting our time with Salah. I think our defense is great, like defensively with Salah, but he just can't coach offensively, and this team uh, needs at least something offensively. And we don't have an offensive coordinator, obviously. I mean, they wouldn't be making all these crazy reports about offensive coordinators, but I would like to see the Jets bring in an offensive mind. I mean, Adam Gase is completely scratch him off the list. That was not bringing in an offensive mind. This franchise always brings in defense, but I don't know. I feel like the Jets, like historically, always had a solid defense, but they never had a real offensive coach. I would have loved Rabel personally, but you can't fire Salah right now. It's just that. So I would have done the same thing they did, run it back, just get a different offensive coordinator. Who would that have been? I don't know. I don't really know exactly who I would have brought in, but personally, I would have moved on from Hackett because he's just terrible.
Well, it's nothing to do with it, as we've kind of talked about a bunch. It didn't matter, right? So it's up to Rodgers, and he's comfortable with Hackett, and that's his friend. So, Alex, right before you came back on, we were talking about Rex Hogan. So I want to kind of close that loop there, where the thing that I remember about Rex Hogan the most is that every time the Jets in the last couple of years, there's been a lot of access during draft day. So there's been cameras in the room, and the propaganda network, the Jets network, would release shows, and they would all be about the draft and how wonderful everything is. And what did Rex Hogan always do in those episodes? He would be the guy that would call the player to say that we're picking him before he passed it around the room. So the running joke with myself and a friend of mine, we always joked about it, was that every time he started this conversation with the kid he goes, "Oh, this is Rex from the Jets." And I'm telling you, every time the guy on the other side, the kid had no idea who Rex Hogan was. You could just tell by he'd be like, "Oh, thanks, man." He's like, "Welcome to the team." "Oh, I'm going to put Joe Douglas on the phone," right? And then Joe takes it, and then it goes to Salah. Of course, how Salah goes, how he goes crazy with the players about picking them and that great stuff. And then they throw it to Woody. But anyway, so it's so funny that Rex Hogan would start those conversations and get on. This is what maybe his primary job besides leaking to the media, because one of the biggest problems that Rodgers had was all the leaks that were going out. And it's obvious. So I no doubt that Zach Wilson is a source, no question, from the player side, and then Rex Hogan from the front office, whose role is to like, "Oh, okay, I'm just going to bash the coaching staff." So the blame goes to them, not on Joe and I and our selection of players. Right? This is an old-fashioned, let me leak to make other people look bad. So good riddance to Rex Hogan, man. Goodbye, Rex. And we'll have somebody else, call draft picks. Maybe we'll volunteer. Do it via Bouk and Zoobie. What do you think?
That's right. We should. We'll probably do a better job.
Anyway, so do we have any more about the Jets? Alex, the season was a disaster. We joke that the Jets organization just wants their fans to think like it didn't happen. 2023 football season did not happen. That's their mindset. It's like, "Oh, what's your problem? Are you kidding me? We just had injuries. Of course, it's injuries." So, maybe we have Alex on, big Jet fan. What's your quick outlook for next year? What do you think in free agency and the draft? And what do you think about that first round pick? It's not the draft preview show, but are you in that, let's trade down and accumulate more picks because we got to get that second rounder? Or is there any guy jumping out at you right now? So what's your view on 2024 football season?
Well, first off, I'd say free agency. I think the guy that I would target the most is probably Calvin Ridley or T. Higgins. They have to get that second option on offense in terms of the passing game. They don't have a number two receiver. They just say whatever you want. They don't have a second guy that can be somewhat consistent on that offense. And they desperately need that. I mean, obviously Garrett Wilson's amazing, but you can't have just one guy you can throw the ball to. And they don't have a secondary receiver. I mean, Tyler Conklin is the closest you have to that, and I don't view him as a second option as a receiver on a team. I think a lot of people can agree with that. Obviously, Brees Hall is amazing. He's not a receiver; he's a running back, and they just don't. They need that second guy. So that's where I would personally spend, a good chunk of the salary cap at, because definitely that is ultimately worth it. Obviously, their offensive line is not going to be pretty next year. Um, that's where I would say the draft pick. Spend that on a tackle, that first pick. Obviously, you guys know I'm not a fan of Joe Douglas, and I think this season backed it up a little bit. He had one good draft class, one good trade, and then in his first two draft classes combined, he missed on every pick besides Elijah Vera Tucker. Say whatever you want, that's pretty damn bad. And this past year, I'm not a fan of his draft class. I think he got one pick right, and hopefully Will McDonald eventually does something. But as of right now, he's had uh, three bad draft classes and one really good one, and everyone wants to just point to this one draft class because of how great it was. And I'm not discrediting that draft class at all, because obviously it was amazing, but you can't you can't go 25% on your draft classes and be a good general manager. You have to be a little more consistent in terms of building this roster. And in terms of free agency, I mean, his signings have really not been good. I mean,
Uh,
yeah, the only signing that I personally really liked that he made was Conklin, because I feel like they did acquire pretty good tight ends for pretty good value. But besides that, I mean, he's
uh,
been like
Well,
really bad at free
DJ
agency.
Reed signing.
Oh, that's correct. DJ Reed. That's true. Besides those two, I mean,
No, you're right.
Uzama was terrible. Lazard was terrible.
oh,
The only other guy I can consider a good signing was Jordan Whitehead. So I'll say that he had three good signings to free agency. But besides that, I can't honestly think of anyone else that is even worth mentioning right now. And not to discredit anyone else, but the truth is he's wasted a lot of salary cap and a lot of players that just aren't good. So why not, if we're going to spend this money, first off, like I said, I think they need to acquire a second wide receiver. So that's what I would do in free agency. But in terms of the draft, it's got to be offensive line with that first pick. And there's a lot of good tackles, so you really can't mess it up. Who would I take? I don't really have that sure answer so far, but
It's early. It's
if I
early.
had to say, I think the Oregon State guy. I don't know his name off the top of my head, but I'm gonna
Yeah,
say right now, he's
Loaga, I think
probably
his
the
name
guy
is.
that. Yeah, I would probably take him, but I don't know. I still haven't looked at the draft too much, but
That's
I would
okay.
say
We
he's
won't
probably
hold
the
you to
guy
that.
I would eye at 10.
Yeah, so Tuwali Fuaga, his name is. The only problem with him, Alex, is that some say that he may project to guard, and it just scares me. He's more of a pure
Mhm.
right tackle. So yeah, we won't get into that. I just was my view is they almost have to trade down because there is a decent
Okay.
amount of tackles. Now I'm not talking going from 10, they're picking 10th, going to like 30th, but to recoup
Mhm.
a second rounder that they've lost, they're going to have to drop at least 10 slots probably. So that would be
Mhm.
kind of my view. But Joe Douglas, to say he's on the hot seat is the understatement of a lifetime. So at least tied together. But Alex, we're on the record, so maybe the Bouk and Zoobie show, we're gonna like maybe be it will be the Alex and one of your Alex, because I can't go through another rebuild personally. So I'm just hoping for a miracle because I can't start
Yeah.
from I'm way too old. So that's way too much content
Yeah,
for the
no.
Jets, John. I don't know if we will maybe mention the Giants quickly because they did hire a defensive coordinator. Everyone's gonna be like, they're gonna have no idea who this guy is. I think it was Shea Bowen, his name is from Tennessee. Uh, his first name is Bowen. So I don't really know much about him. We always joke we don't really follow the assistants that much. But the Tennessee team between the Jets and the Giants now are hiring all their guys. So it's except for the head coach, which is kind of funny. So I just wanted to mention that the Giants have a new D coordinator. before I guess we get to the big game. So even before we get to that, I just want to make a reminder to everybody that how to get our show. So we're still on the world famous LIR.com. We're 927.com, as John mentions earlier in the show. We're still on Spotify.com. Search our show, Bouk and Zoobie, BOUKZOOBIE, and please follow us on Spotify. But more importantly, now as we make our way into the video world, on YouTube, YouTube.com. I think everybody's got the YouTube app, so even more than
Mhm.
Spotify. Same thing though. You got to search the show, BOUK, Bouk and Zoobie, and please subscribe to the show, which is like that. Now, Alex, you might have to help us because the most people who listen to our show are kind of old, and they can't even do things like an episode or subscribe. Somebody asked me today, he's like, "What do I do?" I'm like, "Oh my God!" I said, "It's like the little bell. I think it's like the bell. You hit it for subscribing, and then you kind of have to hover on the screen." If you're on your phone, I think it's a lot easier, but you have to make sure you can get to the like button and please like our show if you like it. Don't give us the thumbs down, just give us that thumbs up. So anyway, that's how we're spreading the world, folks, and we really appreciate it. We had a decent start on YouTube, and we hope to continue putting out good content.
And I wanted to bring up before we get to the our predictions for the big game. So a couple of things happened, and let's talk about the coaching hirings. So, by the way, Harbaugh ended up his contract was he's ending up getting $16 million per year. I didn't realize that Peyton is getting $18 million a year. Can you believe that? 18 million for Peyton and 16 million for Harbaugh. It's amazing how much money these guys are getting. The other thing, we always joke about Taylor Swift. So they actually have revenue figures for the NFL while she's been dating Kelsey. And they are estimating that because of Taylor Swift's relationship with him, that it has been to the tune of an additional $330 million of revenue to the NFL. And Kelsey's gear, his jersey, went from practically zero to in the top 5 jersey sellers in the NFL. Just crazy. It increased 400% the sales. So, even though we've been making fun of her and that relationship, and like I said, Kelsey's been cashing in on. I hope he's cashing in on all this. I mean, with all the various commercials he's been doing, the NFL's doing very well. And you know what? If they want to keep showing their face, it's just cha-ching for them. Cha-ching. It's
Well,
crazy.
I've been getting some feedback from folks saying that if you mention Taylor Swift on your show, we're not going to watch your show.
Okay.
So when you get the analytics from the episode and at whatever the 30-minute mark, suddenly people shut it off. Maybe that will give us a little idea that the pure football fans don't want to hear about this stuff. But it's money for the NFL, so
Yeah.
it's definitely interesting, I guess. I don't know what else to say on that one.
Your friend Eric Benenemy was fired today. Did you know that?
He's not
That's your
coming
great.
back. Yeah, that was the other coaching move, right? Finally, the last job. I guess even the Mike McDonald, right? Seattle, we didn't
Yeah.
talk about.
Yeah,
The
Mike McDonald.
defensive coach. And Quinn, I don't know. We'll go to Alex on this one. I don't get this hire at all for the Commanders. What do you think, Alex?
I mean, personally, I don't know why they wouldn't have went Rabel or I wouldn't have went Belichick for the Commanders. I don't think that would have been a good fit. But I think Rabel would have been a good fit because Rabel is someone you could say, all right, 2, 3 years, give us a chance to build this roster a little more. Ultimately, they have some good players on defense, a couple good talent on offense, but Rabel's a guy. Give him a couple years, and you can be competing, for the division. That would have been my move. I think Dan Quinn is a very good defensive coordinator. Ultimately, I feel like that jump to head coach. I don't know if that's the right move for him. I mean, yeah, he had his chance with Atlanta. And the truth is, I mean, he really was a Super Bowl winning head coach. They blew it. Obviously, everyone knows that story. But the truth is, he is a Super Bowl winning head coach. He really won the Super Bowl. They did blow it. But at the end of the day,
Wait,
say what you want. He really should have won a Super Bowl. So
true.
I still don't think it was a good hire, though. But I don't know. I would have went Rabel.
And then Mike McDonald, right, who's the Ravens defensive coordinator, got the Seattle job, the last job. So I think the interesting thing is that defensive coaches got these jobs. Now Harbaugh is one of, I guess he's technically an offensive mind, but he's more of a CEO type. Yeah, Raheem Morris, another one, so which we kind of ripped going to Atlanta already. So we'll see. And Mayo's another defensive guy. So more defense than offense. Very strange with all the need to score in the NFL. So, yeah, that's it. All the jobs are filled, and on to the combine for those folks, as opposed to Andy Reid and Kyle Shanahan, Andy Reid back again, the guy that was known earlier in his career couldn't win the big game. Well, he got rid of that one, right, guys?
Yes, he did. When he was with the
All right,
Eagles.
so let's get into this game. The betting line, just to throw that out there immediately, it looks like it's moving around. I think it's opened at -1.5 to the 49ers favorite. Now, again, there's odds. You have to pay money a little bit to, make $100. You got to pay 110 or get 110, depending on what sports book you use. So that's the line where it opened. I saw right before we went on, it was at 2 at DraftKings and 2.5 on FanDuel, both in the 49ers favor. So obviously the early money is going on the 49ers, where the late money goes is always kind of key, because injuries is a little bit of a factor here. So I think maybe that's where we could start off, where the injuries, just so the fans are aware. Kansas City's big injury is Joe Thuney, their left guard. So he is not practicing. Now, again, this is Monday night. It's early. This is a type of game, guys, right, that people will play injured. The good problem for Kansas City is their backup, Allegretti, is actually a good player. So he stepped in and he played really. And then the other thing I saw, that Jerick McKinnon, who's actually missed some time, may be back for Kansas City. So people may have forgotten about McKinnon, who's an ex-49er, who actually can help them, especially on third down. And then on the 49er side, there's a couple of guys not practicing. Kittle's not practicing, and the D tackle, Eric Armstead's not practicing. They're both going to play. So they're pretty healthy. They had lost some guys throughout the year, in the secondary especially. So anyway, so that's the line. So Alex, we're going to give you the opportunity to go first. What are you looking for? Give us something that maybe the typical fan's not thinking about, because that's one thing that we talked about in last year's game. I felt the big factor was, could the Chiefs block Hassan Reddick from the Eagles? And they did, and they won the game. So that was kind of like as an example. So I don't have anything putting you on the spot here. We're going to go with -2 on the line. If it's under 3, is it a factor? Probably not. So what do you think? 49ers -2. Who do you like in this game?
From the start, when I saw the Chiefs win the Super Bowl, before the 49ers even won that game, I said the Chiefs are going to win the Super Bowl. I was very, very confident after watching the dominance of the Chiefs' entire playoff run so far. You start with Miami. They didn't even let them breathe in that game. Then you go to Buffalo. You're on the road. If you don't remember, 2 fumbles the Chiefs had. One of them was on the 2-yard line. I know the Bills had that missed kick towards the end of the game, but even then, that's a 14 to 3-point swing right there, with those turnovers. I think the Chiefs easily beat the Ravens, and they proved that. And I thought that they would have a pretty good matchup there. A lot of people were favoring the Ravens going into the playoffs, because you saw the dominance in the regular season. The Ravens are one of those teams that are very good in the regular season, but when you have a guy like Lamar, he hasn't proved himself in the playoffs. Everyone wants to, pick the new shiny toy and say, "Oh, this is the Ravens' year." But at the same time, you're playing against an elite quarterback in Patrick Mahomes, to say the least. He's proven he can play in the playoffs. He does it all the time. The only question mark with Mahomes is he never played on the road in the playoffs, and I think it's fair to say that that did not affect him at all. Um, I really think Mahomes is, in terms of a legacy, this is just another year where he's looking to add another ring to the finger. And who is he doing that against? Brock Purdy. Look, I'm not a Brock Purdy hater at all, but I think it's fair to say that there's a skill gap between him and Mahomes. Um, and everyone wants to say that he's a system quarterback. I don't know if he's a system quarterback, but this is the game where everyone finds out. Ultimately, this is a legacy game for Brock Purdy more than it is for Mahomes, because for Mahomes, he wins this game. It's just number three, and now we're on to number four. In terms of, this is Brock Purdy, this is your chance to be more than just Mr. Irrelevant and the guy that, oh, he was the first good quarterback or first good player in the NFL to be the last pick in the draft. I mean, I think a lot of people can agree that he's proven that, he's more than just that last pick in the draft. Obviously, people want to say he's a game manager, but this is the game for him to prove that he's more than a game manager. But up to this point, you can say, oh, he's a game manager, oh, he's not. But this is the legacy game for Brock Purdy. I still don't think he gets it done. I think Mahomes is just too good. I think the 49ers have a better roster, but ultimately, I feel like last year, everyone said the Eagles would blow out the Chiefs, and Mahomes with the injury still proved that it just doesn't matter. He's just that good. And I don't see the Chiefs losing, honestly. I'm really on the Chiefs in this game. I think the 49ers still have the better roster, but I think it's Mahomes. It's that simple.
Okay, you want to, how about, okay, give me a guy on the Chiefs who's going to have a good game that people probably don't even know who he is. So let's put it that way. And you know what I'm saying, the non-hardcore fan. Give me somebody. Offense or defense, who's going to come up big? I'm not going to say win the MVP, because we know if Kansas City wins, Mahomes is going to win the MVP 9 out of 10 times. So you want to take some time to think about it, or what do you?
Well, offensively, the Chiefs, they have their guys. I don't think there's like some sleeper guy on the offense that's going to do anything crazy. So on the defensive side of the ball, in the Ravens game, he did make a pretty big name for himself with L'Jarius Sneed. I mean, obviously he's a well-known guy, but he's not too well-known.
Right.
I think he's a guy to watch in this game. I think he holds down that Chiefs secondary, which obviously a lot of people can't name anyone that's Chiefs secondary besides him. I think he's a great player. I think, Brock Purdy, if you remember in the NFC Championship game, he threw up a deep ball to Ayuk, got like tips in the air. I don't know. I feel like with L'Jarius Sneed, I think he's a good player. I don't think he's going to get away with something like that on him. If there's just one guy to watch, I think he's a pretty good game.
All right, John, you wanted me to go, or you want to go?
No, I'll go. Yeah, no, I'll go. I definitely think that the Chiefs are going to win on this, just because, as you said, and it just stays in my brain. Many people don't make much money betting against Pat Mahomes, and I will never forget that quote, and it's true.
That was a quote by me, John. Alex was like, "What said that?" It was.
Yeah, no,
Bouk and Zoobie show. Yes,
it's part of the Bouk and Zoobie show. I think Pat Mahomes just has the guile. They were making fun of him after the last game because he had his shirt off and he was saying that he had what everyone calls a dad bod. And I'm like, listen, I don't care if the guy has his belly hanging over his pants. He's a great quarterback. He's a great thinker. I mean, you could actually see him thinking on the field as he's running with the ball. I mean, it's an amazing thing to watch him. And he's not the quickest guy. He's not the toughest guy, but he may be the smartest guy on the field. And I think that counts for a lot. Brock Purdy, I think if Kansas City puts a lot of pressure on him, yes, he's pretty good running the ball, but he makes some stupid decisions sometimes. So I really think that if Kansas City plays their game, I don't even think that this is going to be close, to be honest. The fact that you're saying it's what, -2,
-2,
yeah,
2.5.
yeah, I don't think it's going to be close. Excuse me, let me preface that. If Kansas City plays their game the way they're supposed to, I think this is going to be a very boring game. I may be wrong, but
Okay. All right. Well, you put an if in there, so you put an if in there. So but I know how you feel. So okay. All right. Well, so Alex, when you said about last year's Super Bowl, nobody's picked the Chiefs. Zuby, he hit that one too, Alex. So I did pick Kansas City last year to win,
yes, you
and
did.
John was texting me at halftime, trash talking, and next thing you know, Kansas wins. And I also said that about Pat Mahomes in the beginning as well. But I am actually going against Mahomes, John,
I knew you were.
for
I
the
knew you were going to
first,
do it.
pretty much the first time. So, and the reason is I'm going to give you the matchup that is going to be reason why the 49ers are going to win. And it's the Kansas City's right tackle, Jawan Taylor, against Nick Bosa. That I feel can be a dominating situation where Taylor will not be able to handle him. Kansas City does not like to give help to their offensive linemen. That's the way they play. So that is the matchup that I'm watching. I am definitely scared of two things on the San Francisco side. Definitely Brock Purdy. How could you not be? Because he's all over the map. The way because he could literally go out there and make John look like a genius and throw 3 interceptions in the first half, where we are talking about Taylor Swift next week after this game because it's a blowout. So it is on the table. And the other thing that scares me to death is the rookie kicker Moody in this game. So I'm definitely going against Mahomes is bad enough, and I hate the rookie kickers in the big spot, but I just have this. I just feel like that is just a huge problem for Mahomes to deal with. Is going to be this pass rush, which has been a little inconsistent, but I'm looking for Bosa to have a huge game, and then I'm going to go with McCaffrey as my MVP because I actually think they're going to try to control to keep Mahomes off the field. So I'm going to go against you guys, and we'll see how it plays out.
I had a feeling that you were going to go with the 49ers because you were going with the 49ers almost from the beginning of the year. You were talking up Brock Purdy, MVP, and then withdrawing the MVP talk, and then all of a sudden he's back to being an MVP. So I kind of had a feeling that the 49ers were going to be your Super Bowl pick.
Well, I mean, it's not that
I know you're
bold of
too
a pick.
long.
They're
I know
favorite.
you're too long. I know you're too
I know.
long. I knew that
But
was coming.
ultimately, they're the favorite in the game. So let's not make it like I'm making this like it's not like Joe Namath, making this prediction here. So
Okay.
Zuby's picking the favorite to win the Super Bowl. Oh, okay, there you go. So anyway, but I really do. I really worry about that matchup on the Kansas City side. But I mean, Mahomes is great. I mean, they're not going to lose because of Mahomes playing poorly. That, to me, is very unlikely. I just think they're going to try to control the ball, and they're going to keep him off the field. I think they potentially can do that.
Yeah, they could. And the way McCaffrey's been playing, I mean, what an outstanding game he had last week. I mean, just dominated. So, okay.
All right. Well,
Listen,
there you go. There's the Bouk and Zoobie and Alex predictions for the Super Bowl. I don't know, Alex. So you do any? I mean, you probably your dad will make me watch this. I don't want to get you in trouble. I was going to ask him if he'd done any gambling up there in Fairfield. So it's so easy. Can they sports gamble in Connecticut? Are they allowed up there?
Yeah, no, you can, you
Okay.
can.
Okay. No
Yeah,
kids.
it's allowed in Connecticut, but
There's
but
definitely no
I mean,
college
I
freshmen and sophomores who are gambling. There's none of that going on in college.
no, definitely not, definitely not, definitely not.
Legalize gambling via your phone. That's a bad combination. I mean, I'm telling you.
Oh
These things.
God,
No,
please.
no, they
Oh my
made it. They made it way too easy.
yeah.
You're literally allowed to do it if you're 18 years old. You just put a picture of your driver's license. They let you. So it's like
Wow. Wow. Yeah, it's unlike
they don't
when
even try to stop you.
Paul and I were in high school. We used to have some slime ball handing us what were
The
those?
tickets.
The
The tickets.
slips. They used to
Yeah.
actually give us slips with
Yeah.
with I don't know, those point spreads.
Yeah.
And
You should pick
and
like you
none
have
of
to
us
pick
had
like 3 games. Yeah.
none of us had any money, so we used to bet what, $1 or something. It was, I don't know, but Paul probably bet more, but and then we used to have our football pool. That's the only time we gambled was Super Bowl,
Yeah.
and if you were gambling with the local sleazeball, in
The
which
local sleeve. Yeah, the tickets. I remember the tickets. Yes. Yeah,
oh
you'd have to
God,
bet like 5 out of 5 and you get some sort of payout. I mean, yeah, no, it's come a long way. Now there's like literally a list of prop bets, which I enjoy looking at them. I've yet to open up my gambling account, but there's always interesting things. And I mean, you can't even go through them. There's literally hundreds and hundreds, and everybody knows you can bet the coin flip, but things like anytime score, first touchdown's always a good one. You get odds on first touchdown. I think McCaffrey's the favorite there. And you can have a lot of fun. So it's better off spending in those dumb box pools. I'll tell you that much. You go to a Super Bowl party, I'm dropping all this money on these freaking box pools, right? And then they're picking the numbers out. All right, Paul, you got 4 and 9. I'm like, oh, there you go. Here's my donation. It's just amazing. It's just, at least now with the 2-point conversion, some weird numbers do hit. So it's not like the old days where it was 0, 3, and 7. Otherwise, you could just go home, right?
our friend Lieutenant Lettuce actually texted me to tell me that he won $500 in one of those box pools in the Lions game and the Ravens game. I was like, wow, okay, pretty good. Yeah,
Yeah, I'm sure.
I think he got 7 and 7 or something like that. And
Yes, very skilled. It's a skill. But Dan's,
yeah,
Dan, who may be on one of our future episodes, we're going to throw him a bone here. So,
yeah.
all right. So I don't know if we definitely got to move on to other sports, I guess, John. So I guess we're going to go to the NBA again. Every time you got bad timing with this show because the Knicks are winning every game until they play right before we drop our show. So the Knicks lost. You're still happy, of course, but they did lose to the Lakers. That's not good.
Yeah, they looked a little tired in that game. And to be honest, they were just missing such easy shots. Really, really easy shots. I mean, wide open. If they would have nailed them, that game would have been a blowout for the Knicks. But listen, they're allowed to have an off game. They were missing Anunoby again. They were missing Grimes again. There
Yeah,
is no Randall. There is no Robinson. So
that's a lot.
eventually, it's a lot of that's a lot of starters. And the rumors are that Grimes is going to be in a trade. I mean, the trading deadline is this Thursday. So the rumor is that I don't know why they're so anxious to trade Grimes. I think they should let him develop, and he would be an excellent player. I mean, he's pretty good now defensively. He's a perfect Thibodeau guy. But listen, we'll see. We'll see. I mean, they have Memphis tomorrow night, which they should easily win. I don't care how shorthanded they are. Without Ja Morant, Memphis is going nowhere this year. Nowhere.
Well, yeah,
Um,
John, Alex, John's like everybody in New York. They're having a man crush on Jalen Brunson here. So first of all, are you a Knick fan? One, I have no idea, and are you an NBA guy? So take the floor if you are.
Definitely a Knicks fan. But the thing is with the NBA is the regular season is so like there's just teams that are good in the regular season that are just not good in the playoffs. There's teams that are great in the playoffs that are just not good in the regular season. And I feel like the Miami Heat are the best example of that. Because you look at a guy like Jimmy Butler who doesn't even try in the regular season, and then he's a completely different player in the playoffs because all of a sudden now he wants to start playing basketball. So I feel like the Knicks are one of those teams where they try really hard in the regular season, and ultimately, they just got to make it count when it matters. And the Embiid injury is obviously huge for the Knicks because that's
Yes,
a
it is.
tough matchup in the playoffs, considering the fact that they don't have a dominant center per se. Mitchell Robinson obviously out. He might return. They're saying that he might. Initially, he wasn't, but I mean that could be a good addition for the playoffs. The OG trade, initially, a lot of people were upset about, but RJ Barrett personally, I wasn't tied too much to. I was just upset about losing quickly. I feel like he was our star coming off the bench, a guy that can put up points without Brunson on the court. So obviously that hurt missing him. I know the deadline's coming up. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but Malcolm Brogdon would be the guy that I would make the move for.
Yep.
I feel like he's a guy that can give you those points alongside Brunson. I feel like that's a piece in the playoffs. Ultimately, that's going to help you out in those games where Brunson might not be dropping 30 points every night, but you got to have these other guys that can step up. But ultimately, when it comes down to the Knicks in the playoffs, it's going to be three key things. It's going to be, is Jalen Brunson a superstar or is he a star? And then it's going to be Randall. Can he finally perform in the playoffs, which he hasn't done yet in his career? And then ultimately, if they do make a trade, it's going to come down to, was this trade ultimately something that helps them in the playoffs, or is it they don't make a move and they should have made a move, and now here comes the summer. I follow the Knicks on Instagram, like these Instagram accounts, and in the comments, people always say like their opinions and stuff like that. And it's funny because initially when the OG trade happened, everyone was, pissed off about it. Like everyone is talking about how this is such a bad trade. But if you look at their record, their defensive rating, and like their like efficiency on offense, never has been higher in like years. So I don't know. Is it a coincidence? I think not. I think there's a reason why they made that trade because they needed help defensively. All of Tom Thibodeau's teams that have coached in years have been good because they're defensive first, and then their offense is built around one guy. You look at Derrick Rose. Their team was built around him in Chicago. That's where their success was, good defensively around him. I don't know. I still think Malcolm Brogdon would be a good move. You don't have to give up too much for him. I don't know what the giving up would be, but I wouldn't wait till the summer because I think they have a chance to at least make the Eastern Conference Finals, and that would be what I would like to see. See them get out of the second round, see them make it to the Eastern Conference Finals. But I don't think we'll see them in the finals. But I think the goal of the season should be Eastern Conference Finals.
So who is Brogdon playing with now? He was with the Bucks last year, right? Where is he now?
He was traded.
With Portland right now.
He's with Portland. He's with Portland.
With Portland. Oh.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
He was part of that trade.
He's praying to get dealt. Let's put it that way. Right? Okay. So he went to.
Well,
he got
Alexander. Yes. Yeah. He was traded to Portland. Alexander. There was someone on the Bouk and Zoobie show who was jumping up and down when that trade was made. Very happy was good old Bouk. Was very, very happy with that trade. Very, very happy with the trade. So I was not one of them that was sad to see Barrett go. And you know what? With Quickly, listen, if you decide that you want him in the offseason, you could get him in the offseason. He's going to be a free agent. So they could sign him as a free agent and bring him back to New York if they want. So that trade was a home run for them, absolute home run. Look at, people keep overlooking Achua. I wasn't overlooking Achua. I even mentioned Achua in that trade, that I said that this guy's a good defensive player. And he actually is a pretty good offensive player if they allow him to, he's not used to the type of system that the Knicks are doing right now. If you notice, they have their system. So he looks kind of lost there like Anunoby was in the first couple of games. But this kid he's only 24 years old. And by the way, he is from New York.
Yeah.
He was from the Bronx. And so don't underestimate Achua. That was a good, very, very good trade for them. Very good trade. Well, and I believe that they're going to be I believe they're going to be in the Eastern Conference Finals because I was worried about the 76ers. Now I'm no longer worried about the 76ers. Embiid is out. He's out for the year. He's going to get surgery. He's out. He's gone. And I really don't fear the Celtics either. I really don't. I think we could manhandle that team. The Bucks are a different story. You know, as long as you have Damian Lillard there, that guy drives me absolutely. I mean, besides Yanni, um, Damian Lillard could just absolutely drive you crazy. They have so many weapons on that team. But their weakness is that they don't play defense. They really don't play any defense. And I think Yanni has made a big point about that during this year. And I don't know if Doc Rivers is actually going to be able to help him out with that.
Yeah.
The ironic thing is they have Doc Rivers is actually the coach of the All-Star team. Can you believe this?
We went through that firing. That was a strange one. All right, well, that's good. So it's way too much NBA talk probably on Super Bowl week. So let's we're actually probably running out of time. So we got to get to our weekly spot, and it's called Baseball with Bouk.
Thanks, Paul. So what I'm going to start off with, I'm not going to start off with the Mets again because we've been talking about the bargain basement Mets. And of course, the bargain basement Mets made two insignificant signings this week. They get Jake Diekman, a 37-year-old left-hander, 1 year, $5 million. Whoop-de-doo. Okay, wow. Let's wave the flags around here. The interesting one that I'm looking at is Shintaro Fujinama. Now, this guy, they ended up getting him 1 year, about $3.3 million. He may be the signing of the year. If they can get this guy to, with any type of control, he actually could be another stopper for you. He originally was a starting pitcher out of Japan, and he signed with the A's. He did not do very well as a starting pitcher. He walked a lot of guys. The Orioles ended up taking him at the end of the year as a mop-up guy. But he throws consistently over 100 miles an hour. He's actually thrown as hard as 103 miles an hour, but with no control. So I think that Jeremy Hefner is going to have his hands full with this guy, but he may be the signing of the year. That, look, it was a cheap signing, but I think that particular one could be a grand slam for them as far as I'm concerned, as far as a signing. But
can we repeat that name? Repeat that name slowly for the people out there who have no idea who this person is. What's his name again?
Shintaro Fujinami. So think of Mount Fuji. Fujinami.
Fujinami. Okay.
Fujinami.
All right. Well, before you know it, it's going to be spring training, John. You got to be excited.
Yeah, it's another 2 week. Pitchers and catchers are actually on the 14th, so it's less than 2 weeks. There was a very large sale. The Angelos family actually sold the Baltimore Orioles for $1.7 billion. The Baltimore Orioles to your good friend David Rubenstein of the Carlyle Group. I don't know how they were able to pull off $1.7 billion for such a small city. I mean, the Mets cost $2.3 billion for Cohen. So you got to say the Angelos family did pretty well on that. Other than that, one very large signing, Bobby Witt Jr. signed a 11-year, $288 million extension with the Royals. Huge deal. But again, 23 years old, hit 30 home runs, superstar material. You got to give the Royals credit for that deal. Now, he's able to opt out after years 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 of the deal.
Okay.
But they were very smart. When I read that contract, actually, those last 5 years, he's going to get paid $35 million each year. So it was a pretty well-constructed contract, because the way it's paid out is he gets $2 million this year, $7 million next year, 13, 19, 30, and then the final 5 years, $35 million. So maybe he might not opt out. Who knows? But kudos to the Royals. They did a good job. The Mets should have thought about doing that over the years. Unfortunately, they're going to pay through the nose if they decide to keep Pete Alonso. By the way, Alexander, very quickly, since you are our guest, what's your stance about Pete Alonso? Do you trade him or do you keep him?
Uh, I'm on the keep side for Pete Alonso. I don't understand to get rid of him. I just don't feel like you'll get the same value for him, like anywhere near. Plus, I mean, don't you like the fact that you finally have someone, who's homegrown, who's like good? Like, I don't know. I feel like in baseball, that's what you want. You want to build your team from your farm, right? I don't. It's not just how baseball is. I don't know. I don't know why you would get rid of him. I mean,
How
he's
much
like a
how much
fan
would you pay
favorite.
him? How much would you pay him? Is there a number that you say, okay, you know what? I don't want to keep him. It's costing too much.
I mean, I don't know. Isn't Steve Cohen kind of rich? I don't know. I don't understand why there's like a
That's a
problem
good
with
answer.
that. But I think he's got.
Right.
I think he's got a little bit of money. I don't know.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I think it's more like
I
length
mean,
of contract. How many years?
yeah.
When would you get squeamish on length of contract? How many years?
I don't know. I feel like a typical contract would be like 7 years. I wouldn't probably. I would feel like that's a fair amount. I don't know why uh they would have to do more than that. I mean, he's not that young, Peter Lawrence. I don't know his age top of my head, but I feel like around seven's a pretty good number.
Okay. So anything like in the 10, 11, 12, you think is outrageous, and that's something that you would say no to, because that's what it's going to come down to, as always with this stuff. So
Yeah.
we talked about this last week. They should have signed him already. We don't want to rehash what we're thinking. So Alex, you're a Jet and a Met fan and a Knick fan, and the NHL. Do you have an NHL team? There's no, actually, it's none of the. Well, I guess
I
no
don't
one's
know.
winning these days.
I could care less, honestly.
You're not a hockey guy.
I'll,
All
I'll
right.
just
Well,
I'll just root for New York, honestly. Yeah.
okay, there you go. All right. So you're not, unfortunately, you followed in the footsteps of your relative, John, and rooting for these terrible teams. So anyway, what else do you have? Anything else, John, before we get to our other weekly happening?
Really, I'll save it for next week, because it is time for the rant of the week.
Thanks, John. So we're going to talk about a sport that we have not talked about today. And it's not the Fairfield. What's the nickname of Fairfield, by the way, Alex? I don't know. The Stags or something? Are they the Stags?
It is the Stags. If you know what that is, it's like a little deer or something.
It's like a little deer. So, John, I'm the
Yeah,
I'm
like
the
like
king.
a little deer. Yeah.
I am the king, Alex and John, of useless information, knowing that the Fairfield team is the Stags. I mean, that's sad. That's a sad comment. Anyway, so
Yeah.
my rant is about the great sport of college basketball. So this past weekend, I actually attended a game of a team that John's team, St. John's, and then I watched the game of the team that I actually follow. My top team is Baylor, which because my son went there. So I attend the St. John's, Connecticut game. Great seats, by the way. Thank you, John, again. John unfortunately got sick and could not go, and he's probably lucky because it was pretty sickening in that second half, John. But the one thing that is just so interesting when you go to see a live sporting event is you focus on things that you don't see on TV. So what is the most entertaining thing that you can focus on when you watch a UConn game? Is not on the court. Well, sometimes it's on the court, but it's somebody who's off the court. Head coach Danny Hurley. Watching him during a game is so entertaining. You have never seen a bigger crybaby in your life. He is ranting and raving after every call that goes against him. And it's hysterical because in a basketball game, there's nothing harder to do than officiate basketball. There's going to be missed calls. It's going to happen. They kind of hopefully even out. And that's the way kind of it works. Not with this guy. So he's going on the court during the game. After the timeouts, he's basically rushing onto the court to kind of confront the officials before they can, like, because they do their huddles not by the bench anymore now in college basketball. A lot of them, they do it in the middle of the court. So he gets this excuse to kind of run out there. So he's crying and yelling. And I'm like, what happened to the coach's box? Isn't there a coach's box? Now, when you're in an NBA arena, what line is like? I go, this guy is like basically at half court. Coach Pitino is like the polar opposite. He's basically right in front of the St. John's bench the whole game. So I'm going on and on. I'm like, I can't believe they're not teeing this guy up. It's unbelievable. And then what happens is, of course, because Connecticut pulls away in the second half, there's no end of the game meltdown by Hurley. So kind of like, he can gracefully end the game and shake hands because he won. All right, so that's the first game I go to. Then I go home and I end up, because I had to tape the Baylor game. So Baylor was playing Iowa State. So I had to tape the game, and you're going to love this story, John. So I got home when I went out, and it was like past 10 o'clock. So I started the game late, and I'm watching the first half. So Baylor's playing well. They've had a lot of crazy games this year. They've blown games. And they're up, they're up by 12. They get up by 15 right before the half. And then, of course, Iowa State hits like almost like a half-court shot at the buzzer at halftime to make it 12. I'm like, okay, 12-point game. Halftime. It's like 11:30. I'm pretty tired. So I'm sitting there, guys, and I'm like, you know something? I can go on the internet right now and find out who won or who lost this game. Or I could sit here and watch it on tape. So this has been such a trying season. I'm like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to check the internet. So it's a minute into the second half starts, and I'm like, I can't do it. That's so wimpy. Watch the game, you wuss. I watched the first minute. It goes back and forth a little bit. It's still like a 12-point game. 19 minutes to go in the game. I'm like, that's it. I'm going to check. So Baylor's winning by like 13 when I check, John. I go on the internet, and I see that they won by 2. And I'm like, oh, my God, they won by 2. How did they blow the lead? So now I'm like, all right, if they lost, I'm definitely shutting it off and going to sleep. That's why I did it. So I'm like, now I'm going to watch and to see what happened. I'm like, oh, maybe Baylor had a nice lead at the end and they hit a couple of threes late and they made it 2. So I sit down and watch. The next thing you know, Scott Drew, who is not, literally will not curse. That's it. He does not curse. He gets teed up in the first half because they were a couple of offensive screens were called against his team. So he was kind of bitching. So they teed him up in the first half. Okay, I've seen that before. So he has one tee. In the second half, it's a 13-point game. I think they cut it to like 9. And there's the differential on the team fouls was 9-2 against Baylor at home. There are 9 fouls on them and 2 on Iowa State with 13 minutes to go in the game.
Wow.
He is barking at one of the officials on the, because he's like right outside his box by like a foot. He's talking to one of the officials at midcourt because they're on the other side. All of a sudden, he bends down and he puts his knee. He's like a foot over the coach's box. The referee under the basket tees him up and throws him out of the game.
Wow.
They were up 9 when it happened. He's like, he definitely did not say a word. It was the most ridiculous thing. So the next thing I'm watching this, I'm like, this is crazy. 9 points became 7. Then the next possession, they teed up the bench of Baylor. The assistant coaches, I saw one guy doing like a sarcastic clap, I think, after a foul because it was such a differential. They teed him up again. Wow. Then they get 2 more free throws. It goes from a 13-point lead to a 7-point deficit in 5 minutes. And I'm
Wow.
like, if I didn't know they won this game, I would be going berserk. They get down 7. To make a long story short, they claw back. The game's tied. Baylor drives down. Jaden Nunn lays it in with 2 seconds to go. This story is not over. They're up by 2 with 2 seconds, and they foul him. So he gets a chance to make it a 3-point game. There's 2 seconds. And what does he do? He misses the free throw. But that's actually not too bad, because when you miss the free throw, right, you can't take the ball from out of bounds and do like the
Mm-hmm.
baseball pass, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what happens? He misses it. The guy gets it. He throws it like 2 feet to somebody else, and the horn goes off. The game's over. I'm like, wow, they won by 2. All of a sudden, wait a second, these same officials who teed up Scott Drew and threw him out of the
Oh,
game,
no.
the clock started too early, because when he missed the free throw, it's not when it hits the rim, it's when it hits a person when it comes off the rim. So it legitimately started too early. So they figured out that 0.8 seconds came off the clock before they realized what happened. They give him the ball out of bounds, kind of close to midcourt with
Oh, my.
1.2.
Oh,
I
wow.
know that Baylor wins this game. I'm like, this is definitely a nondescript thing. They're going to heave it up. What happens? Inbounds the ball, passes it off. A guy literally 2 feet inside of half court banks it in at the buzzer. And I'm like, they're going, the announcers are screaming, Iowa State's running on the court. And I'm like, I know they won. What? 0.1 second, John. They had the replay. It's still in his hand by 1/10 of a second.
Wow. Wow.
They called it off. No basket. Baylor wins by 2. So sorry, the fans out there who had to hear this story, because they were like, Baylor basketball, who cares? But I had, because it became a huge story, because it was like, the worst referee game ever. And the craziest thing is, guys, and I'll close with this. This game was Baylor by 4.5 points spread. 4.5. They're winning this game cruising. The next thing you know, they're losing, and they win by 2, and the line was 4.5. The next day, I hear this same head referee was banned from a conference. It was like a smaller conference back in 2013. They basically, you can't referee games anymore in that league. So I have done no research about this, but this was one of the more bizarre games I've ever seen in my life. Anyway, thank God, John, that I made that decision to look on the internet, because I might not have made this show after that half of a game. So that is the rant of the week.
And for Zuby, that is probably what, the 4th or 5th game that has come down to the last shot, or with Baylor. I mean, Baylor's had a ridiculously large amount of close games that they've lost at the buzzer, overtime. You must be going crazy with that team.
They lost in overtime. They lost at the buzzer. In the last 5 games, every game has been literally a heart attack city. And thankfully, I did what I did. So there you go, folks. I was a wimp, but thank God, because I think I would have been on the ground crying during that game, especially at that buzzer, not realizing that they actually still won.
Oh, man.
Anyway, all right, John. Thanks again, Alex. Thanks for coming on. Really appreciate it. Make sure all your friends up at Fairfield check out the show on YouTube, and it will be hopefully posted tomorrow.
Yep. And
thank you guys for having me again. A lot of fun.
Alexander, yeah, thanks again for coming on. And Paul, we're definitely going to have Alexander with his draft picks.
100%. We'll be back to the
since he did such a great job, and we're waiting to hear his sleeper picks like last year.
Oh yeah, I gotta live up to the hype now. I don't know.
Hey, listen, if you're as accurate as you were last year, Zuby kept mentioning you throughout the entire year. At least 3 or 4 times he's mentioned your name. He was so impressed.
Hey,
So,
that's pretty impressive. You come up with 2 rookies that one's going to win probably Defensive Rookie of the Year, gets picked in the second round, and the other guy's a big contributor. So, Joe Douglas, hey, Woody Johnson, Captain Chaos. We may have a young GM for you.
that's right. That's right. As always, thank you to our producer, Zach Zubulake, and to our loyal listeners. Keep bringing us the feedback. We love it. See you on YouTube as well. And also thanks to our community partners, Ronald McDonald House, Kids in Seats, and the Jackie Robinson Foundation. We'll see you next week.